I was a soldier for an empire that never saw my worth. I was sent to protect America's interest, but America had no interest in protecting me. During my time, the U.S. lost over 1,200 troops, over 9,000 wounded. And that might seem like a big number until you contrast it with the 27,000 Iraqi civilian deaths over that same time period.
Right.
Unlike some of my friends, I made it home with all my fingers and toes and without a wound to show. Although back then I didn't realize that not all wounds were visible. I was called a hero, but I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a fraud. I felt like a sucker. I felt alienated and alone. But I quickly found out I wasn't alone. When my civilian friends desperately tried to find jobs during the recession, my siblings returning home from war desperately tried to find mental health services. When the state failed us and alienated us from our own humanity, we looked out for each other. We had each other's backs. Solidarity saved my life. Solidarity saved my life. I first knocked doors at KC Tenants in March of 2021. I went out with a crew led by Ashley Johnson. Where are you, Ashley? There she is. To canvass Green Village townhomes. I talked with tenants who knew they were being mistreated, who knew it wasn't right, but they didn't know that fighting was an option. They felt alone. I got to tell them, we have your back. We have your back. I got to show them solidarity. When I see who leads our city, I see fear. I see people operating from a place of scarcity. I wonder, do they remember why they decided to serve? And if they've forgotten what service means, they make decisions that aid in our displacement. They subsidize their glass buildings with our blood. They smile in our face and lie through their teeth. They're alienated from their values, from their people.
Hello, my friends. Hello, my family. We are back once again. RBN Saturday Live. Hope you guys are having a great day. I'm playing last. We got a little bit more of this clip. We'd love to play it. I was at the KC Tenant takeover rally. They doing great stuff. You can see how much activism can actually empower people. Let me play this last part here.
The answer to scarcity is abundance. We can do better. We can have more. It can feel inevitable that this city is ruled by a politics of fear. It can feel inevitable that the powerful few will forget where they came from and who they serve. It's not inevitable. Not if we organize. My name is Jonathan Duncan. I'm a member and resident of the 6th District. And without saying too much too soon, I'm ready to be part of something new in this city.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Sorry, I got my mic. How you guys doing? Sorry, I'm trying to get used to this mic. Apparently, I gotta tap it like twice. Sorry, guys. I'm back. Sorry. Show me some grace. Still getting used to this mic. But what I was saying is, I was at the KC Tenant UN rally, and despite what most people think, when you look at people who don't invest that much into electoral politics, the message that comes from RBN, the people who invest so much into electoral politics, they seem like the nihilists to me. It doesn't matter what happens in the midterms. It doesn't matter if Trump wins. Doesn't matter if Biden wins. The message that comes from RBN, what I want to instill in you guys, is revolutionary discipline, revolutionary optimism. So when you go to these mutual aid events, when you go to these activist events, it will uplift you. Being around other people who want to create change, it will empower you, like you heard from that guy there, the veteran that the United States abandoned, right? Just show how unhinged we are as a country. So we have a lot of great and fun conversations. We have a few fun stories for you today. We're going to talk about AOC approval rating. We're going to discuss why her approval rating is as low as it is. AOC, her approval rating is around the same. It's only like 1 percentage point higher than Hillary Clinton. How is that possible when you are a champion of so many popular ideas? So what RBN been pointing out, the flaws of the Justice Democrats and AOC, has been apparent to the ordinary voter. We're going to talk about that here soon. But as you guys see with that speech given by the Casey Tennant organizer, next weekend, that's why I wanted to make sure I pop in today, because next weekend will be our Activist Summit. I couldn't do RBN Saturday Live last week because of family obligations, but it's good to be back here today. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the AOC story. And also, that is not a typo in the title, by the way. We're going to cover the NAFO, NAFO army that has been legitimized, retweeted by government officials, by the Ukraine government, by our politicians. You had Washington Post, you had our corporate media that was writing glowing op-eds and fluff pieces that was celebrating the NAFO troll army, which was the most obvious troll operation I ever seen in my life. See, I was attacked by NAFO before because you guys see my coverage on Ukraine. They pretty much are responsible for getting people accounts suspended. They're responsible for getting people YouTube channels pulled because they are a massive NATO, US backed and funded troll farm operation. And now the person who started NAFO was revealed, and it doesn't surprise me, shouldn't surprise anyone. This guy's a Nazi. So how much evidence do we guys see? Because this organization, this group was legitimized by the mainstream Democrats. So you got Democrats that are 100% willing to form coalitions with Nazis. They're a red line. As long as you dislike Republicans, as long as you dislike Putin, it's an open tent coalition that we forming with the New World neoliberal agenda. So we're gonna talk about that later. I want to get started with this story first on Israel, because I want to explain to you guys why I cover politics and global events the way I do. There's so many Western chauvinists, honestly, white progressives and white liberals who they see our coverage of foreign affairs and they're confused. They're like, why is RBN apologizing for Putin? Why is RBN apologizing for Xi? I explained so many times before. I don't care about Putin. I don't care about Xi. I don't care about China. I know who my enemy is. I know who's the greatest funder of terrorism in the world. I know who's the biggest threat to world peace. It's the United States. It's Israel. It's the UK. It's this new axis of evil. Not really new, because if you look at the people who support the NATO expansion, ever-ending conquest expansion, global new Cold War, they want to start with China. Those are documents that came from NATO. That's their 2030 plan to attack and challenge China and make them the new geopolitical enemy. Take down Russia, take down China, and you see what's going on in Iran and the Western backing. What I'm sure is a lot of grassroots support on the ground there, but definitely attempt at regime change from the West, something that they've been aiming to do in Iran for a long time. So you had the West that is unhinged in its goal to accomplish geopolitical dominance, Western hegemonic dominance, full spectrum dominance, as Margaret Kimberly described. I oppose them. I have no reason to apologize for Putin or China. Like, whenever people criticize these countries or whatever, my goal is for unapologetically for the liberation of my people and the advancement and power given to the workers. That's my goal. The number one threat to my community is the imperial force that is known as the United States, Israel, UK, and the NATO colonial powers. It is not a coincidence that the same people that try to plunge the world into World War III and destroy the global working class are the same colonial powers that was responsible for colonializing Africa and slave trade. The people who support fascists in South America, like Bolsonaro and like Ivan Duque in Colombia, and the right-wing fascists in Venezuela, like Juan Guaido, and their party full with class warriors that committed ethnic cleansing against the indigenous people of Venezuela. Same in Brazil with Bolsonaro. So we have, and I'm gonna cover this later, the Nazi supporting NATO, the Nazi supporting troll farm that they're responsible for. Nazism was never defeated. It was implemented by the West. Because if you look up Nazis in Germany, they learned how to perform the Holocaust by looking at the United States and how they committed genocide against the indigenous people and the implementation of the Black Codes. So it's always been connected. So they always seen them as kin. So then when the West was melting down at Nazis and Hitler in Germany, they was like, the fuck y'all talking about? You guys are literally lynching Black men right now. But you guys mad at how we treated the Jews? That was Germany. They're like, we learned from y'all. They don't teach you that in school, don't they? Oh shit, we got super chat. Sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat so too often. Big shout out to anyone who is showing support. I'm gonna get into the axis of evil. Let's read the super chat. Nancy Pelosi, another criminal, another person who body count with the wars that she support. And whenever capitalists, like there's a museum of the victims of communism. Okay, if we're gonna go by that logic, are we gonna talk about the victim of capitalism? Which I would add on Nancy Pelosi body count. These people are insane. The extreme terrorists that the United States has supported in order to accomplish their goal of Western imperial domination is something that white culture just overlooks for some reason. And a lot of people like Vosh, you see Kyle with his horrific coverage of NATO in the US. Like these people are Western chauvinists, and they believe that the United States and their allies actually will represent the best faction for the working class. That is not true. So Pelosi yelling Slava Ukraini when introducing Zelensky on the Congress floor. Why are Democrats reappropriating neo-Nazi slogans and symbolism? The Democratic Party are Nazi sympathizers. I asked the question on Twitter, responding to Caitlin. I'm gonna show you guys that tweet later. At what point, now that it was exposed that the NAFO troll army that is backed by NATO in the West was started by Nazis and people who have Nazi sentiments, they propped them up. They propped up and celebrated Azov Battalion in the New York Times to this day. To this day, they're writing fluff pieces about the Azov warriors fighting against Russian imperialism. So is it too much to say that the Democratic Party are Nazi sympathizers? The same with the Republican Party for obvious reasons, right? But anyway, let's get into the first story because I'll explain to you guys why. We CJ asked the question, and we was having a conversation behind the scenes, like if you're a Zionist, are you imperialist? And my answer to him was hell yes, because that's my reasoning that I gave to CJ was if I asked the people that we had on the Palestinian Community Network and many of my Palestinian allies, they're like, if are you Zionist are you imperialist if you're a Zionist? They would say hell yes. The same way I would say if you support our fascist police state that siphons wealth from Black families and responsible for mass death, you're complicit with white supremacy. I think it's the same idea. So Palestinians would say that's connected. And you have not only the Democratic Party that's unapologetically subservient to Israel, including John Fetterman, the new progressive darling. Here it is. Here I have this. I'm gonna show you guys this. So even the people the people call the farthest left Democrat, the most progressive Democrat we have, John Fetterman, going by the narrative. He says he will lean in on U.S.-Israel relationship as a senator. Do you guys know what Israel is doing right now that is not being covered by the Western media? What a lot of these progressive frauds are complicit with, like John Ferriman, Jamal Bowman, all these people who are being. Nina Turner is another example. Candidate, many progressive candidates being weak on Israel while they are literally engaging in active ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people in the West Bank. There have been so many raids by the Israeli army into Palestinians, over 160 killed just this year. When they started their initial push, their second wave of escalation, they killed 51 people just in August. And it's just something that is not even on the conscious of people who claim they are supporting the liberation of people. You have the United States and their allies that are cheering on terrorism, cheering on suicide bombers that are killing civilians. Meanwhile, a Palestinian would throw a stone in response to Israeli soldiers raiding their neighborhoods and killing their people. 14-year-old Palestinian boy was just murdered by the Israeli army this week. And then our insane corporate media, the bloodthirsty corporate media, they will say, yeah, these people deserve to die because these people are actively opposing their occupation in response to Israeli aggression. So Israel will commit insane human rights violations, and then Palestinian people on the ground will respond in kind. And then they would say, oh my God, Palestinians are throwing stone at us, kill them. So they just did another raid where over 40 Palestinians was wounded. It was the latest violence in the northern West Bank, where the Israeli military has been conducting nightly arrest raids against suspected Palestinian militants. Let me explain to you guys what that means. Anyone who shows any resistance to Israeli occupation, anyone that Israel feels like displacing and resists that, like the same way the Israeli army and the Israeli government was bulldozing homes. And then if anyone had a home that they lived in for years and they resisted the Israeli army, they would say, oh my God, look at these militants. Look at these militants resisting us committing an ethnic genocide against their people. Even when reading this story in AP, and it's the same with all Western media, even when they report on these, you see there's still propaganda terms they have to throw in there, right? See, that's what I was explaining, right? They talking about the unrest that erupted in Jerusalem. Israeli police unleashed live rounds, tear gas, and stun grenades on Palestinians, throwing stones, firecrackers, and fire bombs, marking the biggest spasm of violence in the cities in months. Look at the contrast there, guys. For the people who always want to play both sides, you have the Israeli police live rounds, tear gas, which is a war crime to use on people, stun grenades, and what do the Palestinians have? Stones, firecrackers, fire bombs. And then this is one of the few like headlines you will find where they like other headlines they will say, oh well, there was clashes in Gaza. This is not a clash. If a professional fighter, if Kamaru Usman punches a 13-year-old boy in the face, would the media write, oh, Kamaru Usman clashes with boy? They would write it as the assault that it really is. And the same thing that we were seeing with the Ukrainian government that is doing everything they can to censor reporting on this. The new Western strategy, and this is why I call them the axis of evil, the biggest threat to the freedom of the press and quote unquote liberal Western values is the West, guys. The West. It is the height of cowardice. And this is why are being called these frauds out. Like Kyle Kalinske, Marianne Williamson, all these people. It is the height of cowardice to focus on criticizing Putin and pretend they're the greatest evil when you live in the biggest sponsor of terrorism, the largest penal colony, the number one threat to free press. And Russia, by the way, women have access to rights like an abortion. I live in Missouri. That shit's gone. Shit's gone. In Russia, if you have a child, if you have a family, you get at least 180 days paid maternity leave. So not only do you have the right to choose, if you do choose, the state will give you 180 days to take care of your family, paid. And then I have my friend Zoya. She often would say that there are people that have maternity leave up to a year, 2 years. There are a lot of different loopholes that people use, and they're not interested in closing them. Obviously, the ultra-right capitalists in Russia, I'm sure they are. In Russia, if you get cancer, you don't go bankrupt. That happens in the United States. So I'm not here to apologize for Russia, but once again, as a working class proletariat with revolutionary discipline, we need to be able to acknowledge who the fuck our enemies are. Everything they say Russia is doing wrong, which I will agree with, the United States and the West does tenfold. Russia cracks down on dissent. Russia goes after journalists. Meanwhile, Israel, new evidence in this article I'm showing here, new evidence shows that Shireen Abdul Akleh, the internationally acclaimed journalist that reported on the crimes of Israel, was directly targeted by the Israeli government. Not only was she targeted by the Israeli government, the United States is running cover for the Israeli government killing journalists. And despite this evidence and many independent probes finding the Israeli government targeted Shireen because she had a jacket that literally said media on, a helmet that said media. Everyone knows who she is, and it's very obvious, especially in this area where the Israeli army are psychopaths that kill journalists. They're like, guys, we are media and we cannot advertise it more. So everyone who looked into it was like, it's obvious they went after Shireen because she has a lifetime exposing the Israeli army war crimes. So then the Biden administration, they were like, oh, we need to wait to a credible investigation. We can't just go off any biased reporting. The Israeli army and the Western allies, they did a sham report where it's like, oh man, it's impossible to tell, man. It was clashes. There was Palestinian people throwing rocks. It was crazy. It was chaos. Oh no, who knows? Shireen Abdul, she got caught in the crossfires. But based on every single independent report, there was no shots fired at all from either the Palestinians or the Israelis. It was them shooting and killing Shireen in a targeted direct attack. And that is the people who the West support. Do we know who our enemies are? Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Thank you for $20. Do we know who our enemies are? Why are you spending any of your time talking about the evil Nicolas Maduro, the evil Vladimir Putin, when it is the West that is killing reporters and journalists? It is the West that is imprisoning Julian Assange, an Australian citizen that exposed the crimes of the United States. Saying the president that it don't matter where you're from, it don't matter if you're a citizen of our country, you do not expose our crime, you do not cross the West, as shown by the Ukrainian hit list and the people that the West has continued to assassinate. I need to do a chat. When I'm alone, it's hard. Zoya, do you want to join? I want to get Zoya in here. I don't know. No pressure. I'm gonna drop her a link. No pressure though. Let's see what else. What other receipts I have on the Israel story? Here it is. So I want to show a few more on Israel. Yeah, I need. We got a lot to talk about, so I need to move on to. Another super chat. Nice. Appreciate the support, guys. Thank you for the $5. Thanks for talking about this issue, Nick. Much respect. Yeah, the issue of Western backed powers, the axis of evil, the United States, Israel, the UK, going after and killing journalists has been something I covered since day one. I've covered Shrine. I've been on top of this story. Meanwhile, all the quote unquote left media have been ignoring this. And even if they did talk about it, they probably did one story about it when it first happened. No follow ups. You got Breaking Point like Crystal and Cal. They will say stuff. They will pretend the Democratic Party is better when I just explained to you the Biden administration is complicit with Israel in covering up the death of Shireen Abdul Akleh, an Israeli journalist. How is that the lesser of two evils? I am asking you guys to explain this to me. They won't have this conversation because you can't explain. Look, hell, don't even talk to me. Talk to a Palestinian, look them in the eye, explain to them that Anthony Blinken, the unhinged Zionist, is somehow the lesser of two evils. He has the same exact ideology as Mike Pompeo. It's the exact fucking same thing. But these comfortable people who are not victims of U.S. imperialism, of the police state, of state violence in general, it's easy for them to cast aside and see the political theater, see who tweets nice things, and they say, "Oh, look at at least the MAGA, these people are unhinged. They got the same fucking policies, but they're like, oh well, these people are worse, even though both support the genocide of Palestinian people, both support the police state." Sabby did a great story yesterday talking about how like John Fetterman. Talking about, I'm not weak on crime. Yeah, all even the progressives are backing the police now. Let's get to the next part of this. So I want to show you guys. There's been ongoing protests because how violent the Israeli government has. Well, they always been, but it just the next level of offensive they are waging in Gaza. And I explained to you guys the reason why they are doing this now, because all of the Western media allies are using the Ukrainian war as a shield. So right now, the West is trying to paint Russia, China, and Iran as the bad guys. So you had Joe Biden willing to forgive Saudi Arabia. You have their administration turning a blind eye to all the Western powers because they want to paint the opposition as evil. The opposition are the evil ones. So it's not in their vested interest to cover whenever their allies do something evil. So ever since then, you have seen an escalation from Israel, from Saudi Arabia. I covered this many times. Saudi Arabia has been cracking down on journalists and dissent because he got the green light from the Biden administration, because Biden criticized Donald Trump for being weak on Saudi Arabia regarding the death of Jamal Khashoggi, right? And then Biden took office. They investigated Jamal Khashoggi and like, okay, never mind. We're not going to do anything about this because Saudi Arabia is a crucial ally. And then Saudi Arabia was like, there it is. We can do whatever we want. Joe Biden gave him that green light. Anthony Blinken gave them that green light. This is stuff that the boutique left, managerial media, they will never cover. We cover Gaza. We cover Palestinian struggles all the time because I cover state violence. As a black leftist, it's in my best interest to cover the violence of my empire, not joining the empire in fear-mongering over their enemies that we can't even control. It doesn't even make sense. So there are massive protests in the West Bank and East Jerusalem because, I mean, thousands and thousands of people in the street. And this is my tweet where I explain over 160 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces this year alone. Meanwhile, the Nazi-supporting West is silent. And once again, we're going to get to the Nazi-supporting West part here very soon. So I just want to point out the hilarious irony real quick while I'm thinking about it. Is when you have liberals will call me, they call Ilhan Omar, they call Rashid Tlaib, they call anyone who oppose and call out Israeli apartheid anti-Semitic. If you support BDS, you're anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, they are literally funding Nazis. The people who are funding Nazis are calling us anti-Semitic. I want to see if I can find that because I had a banger a while ago while I was talking about that. See if I can find it. And then I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna tell you guys some more receipts. I guess we just move on to the next part because I'll make the contrast between that. They will call it Palestinian fighting for their liberation, anti-Semitic, while they are joining forces with Nazis. That's it's just classic stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna show you guys this. Here's another one. Doctor, just humanizing some of the people. I was trying to find as many stories as I can. Doctor among the 2 Palestinians killed by the Israeli forces in Jenin. At least 160 Palestinians, this is what I explained earlier, has been killed by Israeli forces. And after the death of Shireen, Al Jazeera is on their ass. They are pissed for good reason. For good reason. They've been on their ass. Maybe I can find another Shireen story. They shot 2 Palestinian men, including a physician, and then they were like, "Oh, don't worry, those people were militants." That is what Zionists would say. They would say the 14-year-old boy they killed, that he was a militant. This doctor was a militant. This health ministry another 20-year-old. Who that is? He got shot with a bullet to the head. Not even an effort for non-lethal engagement by Israel, by the way. So there's another great piece I want to show you guys because I want to explain to you guys why I have the politics I do. People will say, "Oh, well, Nick, your politics are just USA bad." They're like, "Oh, revolutionary black," they just say USA bad. They would never criticize Putin. They would never criticize China. And I'm like, yes, that is the most base politics you can have right now as a socialist, as an advocate of the working class. USA bad should be your politics. So when people are like, "Oh my God, your politics is just USA bad," I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. We are the evil empire. Westerns live in denial. This is a great article by Jonathan Cook, and I want to read this article, and then we also get into the AOC story as well. We still got a few more stories to go through. But AOC, Vosh, Sam Cedar, Cenk Uygur, the Marianne Williamsons, these people believe the West are good guys. So that's why they had the opinions that they do. Marianne Williamson talks about Afghan women when the United States was pulling out of Afghanistan, even though the quality of life for Afghan women got worse, and because there is this inherent belief that things would be better if the U.S. is there. The reason why Vosh argued for U.S. occupation and interference in Syria is because they truly believe U.S. presence will be the best for the global working class, and that is ridiculous. So this is a great article by Jonathan Cook. Westerners live in denial, convinced they are the good guys. And he explains stark contradictions in West treatments of the Ukraine war and the occupation and siege of Palestine should serve as a wake-up call. This is why we cover this geopolitical issue the way we have. Because if your goal, which my goal is to shift the Overton window as far to the left as I possibly can, whenever the capitalists, imperialists, whenever our enemies give us an opportunity to expose their hypocrisy, to shift public consciousness to the left, we should take it. So while they're talking about freedom and democracy, Ukraine stand up for the democracy, instead of repeating that line like a State Department repeating shill, grifter, like a lot of these boutique leftists are, I'm going to say, okay, that's interesting that you stand for democracy. What about our rigged elections? What about our democracy? You guys say you are fighting authoritarianism in Ukraine and Venezuela while we imprison 1/4 of the world's prison population? We are the most authoritarian country. Are we clear? More authoritarian than Russia, than China, than Venezuela, than any country you can think of. We got a fucking Patriot Act and a national spying program that everyone's aware of. It's not even a secret. Everyone knows the U.S. government spies on us. We all know we got the Patriot Act, and people are just like, "Oh yeah, this is how our government works." That's why I don't buy Robbie's and the other capitalist bullshit when they start fear-mongering about socialist authoritarian countries. Laws exist for a reason. What is your laws? Who do your laws serve? Is your law serving the proletariat? Does your mandate come from the people, which socialist revolutions and socialist movement aim to achieve? Or does your mandate come from capitalists, the privileged minority that bought society? Where does your mandate come from? That's what the question. All countries have to implement authority. It's the West that is the number one violator of human rights and the most violent state. That is the most important thing to judge. The authoritarian China, over 1 billion people, over 4 times more people than the United States, but we imprison more people than China. Someone explained to me the logic in saying that China is more authoritarian than the United States. With those, that's just basic math, basic numbers. 5 times less people, 1/4 of the world's population, imprisons less people than China. What are we talking about here? What is even the conversation? Let's read the article, because this is a brilliant article. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I want to inspire you guys to give it a click. Let me zoom in. This is from Jonathan Cook. Great article. No one took responsibility for the explosion over the weekend that ripped through a section of the Kerch Bridge that linked Russia to Crimea and was built by Moscow after it annexed the peninsula back in 2014. See, this is the terrorism that the West now celebrates. They now celebrate in Kiev, in the West media, mocking Russia, like, oh, this was an embarrassment. You guys see how we suicide bombed that bridge and killed 3 civilians? Ha 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 ha. We surely are the good guys. So then they explain how Russia responded, because despite media propaganda, it was obvious who did it. Everyone fucking knew this was the West coalition, whether it be Ukrainians, whether the United States, whether Poland and their allies. It was obvious who did it. You even had an ambassador to Poland, someone higher in leadership, that was like, when it happened, they said, "Thank you, U.S." No, sorry, I'm thinking about the Nord Stream pipeline bombing, which is the same concept. The West supporting terrorism, and then the media has to pretend that it's a mystery, even though everyone knows who bombed the Nord Stream pipeline that had Germany in the streets. You had sanctioned the U.S. trending in Germany after that, because everyone knew the United States did it. Critical infrastructure in Europe that's going to cause millions of people to freeze, gone because the U.S. wanted to wane Europe from dependence from Russian energy. And this coming directly from Anthony Blinken. He said that. He said this is great for us. So in this article, the next 2 paragraphs, he explained how Russia responded with missiles in Kiev, because the West escalated once again. And then they explain how you got the West cheering for terrorism against Russia, but whenever Palestinians fight back, silence. Actually, I'm wrong. Not silence. It's massive condemnation. Well, they say, they will ignore the massive amount of bodies that the Israeli government is responsible for. Like, once again, the ratio of killed to death between Palestinians and Israelis is not even close. Israel kills way more people than Palestinians. You can find any graph. I can pull one up here soon. But they will see one example of Hamas fighting back, of the Palestinians fighting back, and they will say, "Oh my God, look at these terrorists. Israel has the right to defend themselves." That is what Marianne Williamson says, despite what other people trying to claim she doesn't say that. They say, "Well, we fund the Iron Dome. Jamal Bowman, he funds the Iron Dome. AOC votes president on the Iron Dome. The progressives, Bernie Sanders, we all support the Iron Dome because Israel has the right to defend itself from Hamas and Palestinians that is fighting back from their occupation." The same exact thing they're cheering for Ukraine. I'm going to read from here. Had Palestinians openly celebrated blowing up a bridge in East Jerusalem, a territory illegally annexed by Israel in the 1960s, and killed Israeli civilians, as collateral damage they rack up in the process, who could really imagine the Western media reports being supportive of that, the same way they're supportive of the Ukrainian fascists and terrorists. Nor would Western academics have lined up for the Palestinians as they did for Ukraine. To explain in detail, they linked this. So you had these academics that, and I've seen a lot of these. I'm glad they put an example here. These academics will post these long threads justifying why the terrorist acts committed by the Ukrainian forces are justified. The same way these Nazi supporting scum, they wrote long ass tweet threads explaining why, yeah, the Ukrainian government are killing people who are sympathetic to Russia. Yeah, sure, that's a war crime, but here's my essay on why they should be able to do that. So any terrorist group or freedom fighter, depending on what side the media is on, you can write these tweet threads about anyone who commit terrorist acts. So there are terrorists in Somalia who commit terrorist acts against their government. And then they say the reason why they do it is because they're resisting their government that do not have the mandate of the people. These people are installed by the United States, like the same way Biden supported the coup and supported the new backed government in Somalia. So the terrorists, Al-Shabaab, they would say, oh, the reason why we're doing this is because you guys are robbing us of our democracy. You guys are robbing us of our sovereignty. And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. My point is, you can do this thread on every single terrorist act if you want to. And that is what, oh, sorry, I didn't mean close it. But that is what, I'm going to pull it back up. That is what the article was explaining. Oh, Zoya. Zoya's life is here. What's good, my friend? I don't know how long he was waiting because you know I'm alone today. Hopefully you haven't waiting long. I was going through this article. Do you have any thoughts about what I've been talking about? Anything you want to say before I move on? What's good, my friend Zoya? You guys know her. She's great.
Hi, everyone. I
wanted to invite Zoya on because she got receipts for days, especially someone who grew up in the USSR like Zoya has. This is an issue that she's invested in. Obviously, she knows who is our enemy, right? So I'm gonna go to the article, and Zoya, feel free to just interrupt if you want to chime in with anything. And you can stick around for the AOC and the AOC story as well. Oh yeah, the NAFO. Oh, I'm glad you're here for that. I'm so glad you're here for that story.
Oh my god!
Anyway,
yeah.
Let me continue because I just gave you an example of a Western academic like this, like Jonathan Cook brings up. They'll write long Twitter threads and op-eds explaining why Ukraine are terrorists. And he said they will never do that for Palestinians. Instead, there will be thunderous denunciations of Palestinian savagery and terrorism that you see from the Democratic Party, the media, the New York Times, Washington Post, and even progressives legitimize this. The example I give is their their non-support for BDS. And their claim that Israel has the right to defend himself against the Palestinian terrorists. One of the tweet threads that Marianne Williamson deleted was her explaining this. Like, oh my God, how are you guys defending Hamas? Why are you guys defending Hamas? Israel they are the occupier. They are the colonizer. I am not going to criticize the tactics there, but that's the first thing they want to do to apologize for Israel, right? With Palestinians, let's see. I lost my spot. In reality, I'm gonna read the last two paragraphs and you move on. In reality, Palestinian resistance nowadays is far more modest and yet receives Western censure. Exactly what I'm talking. The demonization of Hamas, who can't hold a candle to the terrorism of the Israeli forces. That's just the example he linked there. Palestinians need only to fire a homemade rocket or launch a incendiary balloon. And he explained that to get the wrath of the international community and Western media. That is not what you're seeing in response to Israel killing journalists and the crimes of the Western Empire. And this is And the West does good. This article, I'm gonna cut off there. I'll let you guys check it out. This is a great article from Jonathan Cook about how the West is in denial. He talked about the straight up Western hypocrisy and double standards that Cuba called out. He said, how can we condemn Russia and how can we condemn the people that the West wants us to condemn, like Nicolas Maduro, when you guys do everything that is worse? Let me read this. This is a good example. Westerners, for example, are currently cheering the protests in Iran, where women and girls have taken to the streets and created mass disturbance in schools. Their protests were sparked by the death, I don't want to butcher her name, Mahsa Amini, after she was taken into custody for wearing a hijab. Western media celebrate these young women casting aside their hijab in defiance. The West bewails the beatings and attacks they receive from the tyrannical government. He did explain that there's no solidarity with Palestinians, but I would add these same people that cheering the Iranian protest. I saw a Fox News segment where they was doing the same thing. These same people that are cheering this Iranian protest, quick to demonize black people marching in the streets in 2020. Quickly demonize anyone that marches the street when the police kills people. They support Ron DeSantis banning protests. If you got to beg for permission, that's not protest. That's a prep rally, by the way. And he said, word to apply for the brave Palestinians. So you guys get the point. And there's a lot of great examples. There's a long, well-written article by Jonathan Cook. So, Zoya, do you want to add anything to that before I move on, based on your reaction to the article?
Well, just that, whether someone's a terrorist or just civilians fighting for their freedom is solely based on who America wants to invade. It's just based on American interests. What happened in Crimea with attacking the bridge was completely a terrorist attack, and Ukrainians were celebrating it, even though Putin said that is a red line for him, and as soon as they attack it, that he will retaliate. And then everybody the next day is shocked, surprised, and calling that a terrorist attack. Do terrorists give you warning? Do terrorists say, if you do this, then we'll do this? It's outrageous. But let's get into all the receipts. I know you have a plethora.
Yeah, I have another one. I know you have a ton too. I'm glad that you joined us today. Just to wrap up the West is in denial, and how my initial first story, which already went long, because if I'm gonna talk about how the West is evil, there's plenty to talk about. So I'm gonna explain another, like the EU, NATO, and these Nazis and their ideology, what they are actually about. And I'm gonna get into this in a lot more detail in our next segment. But this is this guy. He goes off in this insane tangent, and the most interesting thing is whenever I pull up these videos, it's not like just one random person. Like I'll show you guys the head EU chief who was saying stuff like, yeah, we gotta fight to the last Ukrainian. Yes, Europe gonna freeze, gonna be a food shortage, but you gotta toughen up, and we gotta fight through that to defeat Russia. Her essentially saying that you gotta starve and Ukrainians gotta die so NATO can't lose. So I'm showing you guys the quotes that coming from their leaders. Now, this is EU foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell. And this is the Western chauvinist, white supremacist ideology that RBN is trying to defeat. If you wonder why I'm here to rebuke the West instead of repeat their talking points. So let's get into this video.
Europe is a garden. We have built a garden. The rest of the world, and you know very well, Federica, is not exactly a garden. The rest of the world, most of the rest of the world, is a jungle. And the jungle could invade the garden. And the gardeners should take care of it. The jungle has a strong growth capacity, and the world will never be high enough in order to protect the garden. The gardeners have to go to the jungle. Europe.
Do you guys hear this unhinged motherfucker? That is their ideology. And then he's saying, well, we gotta protect our garden from the jungle. Not even hiding the racist tropes there. And they say we have to invade them in order to stop them from harming our society. Do you guys see their ideology, what leads them to start these conflicts against Russia and China? We must instill our ideology. We must instill our dominance on other cultures. These are the people that are in charge, that are plunging our world into economic crisis and endless war. So do you want to focus and spend all your time fear-mongering over China, Russia, and Putin? Or are you going to have your head on straight and call out the government that you live in? We are citizens of the imperial core. Our main priority should be calling out this evil. The evil of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi that was complicit on the war on terror, that support the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Israel, that is funding genocide in Yemen, that is starving millions of Afghan people. These people are not the lesser to evil. These are the most evil people in humanity that we must fight. So any last thoughts? And I'll move on to the main story that I'm a little late on today, huh? But we're gonna talk about the NAFO army next. So any last thoughts on this? I need to pull up the receipts that you sent.
They're just saying the quiet parts out loud, and there's tons of videos like that out there for anybody that's actually paying attention. You know, the Anglo-Saxon supremacy has been around for centuries. This isn't new, and it's their far-right extremism that's being pushed through all the countries, Ukraine included, unfortunately, after 2014.
All right, so we get to our next story. Hopefully, I'm missing super chats. I have not been, and we need to get some mods in here as well because I'm alone today. Hopefully, you guys enjoying the Saturday show. So next week, I'm gonna try this out again, the Activist Summit, and we're gonna start making some announcements next week. But I am super excited. I am super excited. The quality, like the union leaders and organizers that we have, that's coming on. I'm gonna wait to make some announcements, but it's super. Like we got people that are working on strikes. We got like a new labor strike announcement we're gonna make. Just a sample of stuff we're gonna have next weekend. So I definitely want to do a show today because I missed last weekend. Hopefully you guys enjoying this show. So let's move on to the main story. And I'm super glad you joined us for this one, Zoya, because I explained many times the West is losing. So there's this information battle. Oh, let me change this. I should have changed it to the West or the bad guys, but let's do this. NAFO, Nazi origin disposed. I've seen some people ask if that was a typo. That is not a typo. That stands for North Atlantic Fellas Organization. If you're on Twitter, if you're on any social media, you guys have seen these people. I know of them because they came after me multiple times because, I'm exposing the West. They're this completely inorganic troll farm that is ran by intelligence agencies. The same thing that the West accused Russia of doing, where they like, oh, Russia have massive disinformation troll farms. Everything the West accused their enemies of is projection. So when the whole Russiagate thing was going on, they was talking about their goals, right? They was talking about what they already did and their goals that they're working on. So before I get into the story, because the one of the founders of NAFO was exposed as a Nazi. So the mainstream media and liberals have been trying their best to pretty much have Holocaust erasure by apologizing for Stefan Banderas and the neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Stefan Banderas have streets named after him. And he was complicit with the Holocaust that killed countless Polish Jews. Imagine if Germany had like Hitler Street or any Nazi general. And then people just apologize for that. People in the highest level of Ukrainian government that is Nazis, and people want to deny that. I'm going to show you guys this video of people trying to deny the existence of Nazis. And I got this from Zoya. You guys see, I literally found this from Zoya because she was tweeting this out. So if you guys don't know, I follow international soccer a lot. I love watching Premier League, Champions League. I try to catch as much as I can, La Liga, if I can. It has been well known, the racism that Black, Muslim, and other brown players are subjected to when competing in Europe. Because a lot of times they have cross-Europe competitions. France got a large Black player base. The Premier League has been getting even more black in the last like few decades. So they have these cross-European matches, and this hub of white supremacy that everyone knew about pre-2022. Everyone knew about the white supremacy problem in Eastern Europe, especially in Ukraine. Widely reported by the corporate media, and it was widely known by people who were fans of the sport. If you watch like Champions League football, Premier League football, I just watched this game the other day where they was doing this big thing where they're like, we stand against racism. We will not tolerate anyone mocking and jeering other players. That started because of Ukraine and other similar countries, and the Nazis in Poland as well, and some bad areas in England. And they're like, it's a whole thing. But in Ukraine, it was particularly bad. So this is a video showing Ukrainian Nazis the way they would intimidate black and brown players. That's what they're doing here, just for reference. Does that look like Russian propaganda to you? So once again, NAFO and the troll army, they will go after me because I talk about Ukrainian Nazis. They'll say, oh my God, look at this Putin puppet repeating Russian propaganda. This is a soccer stadium, repeating Nazi slogans, doing Nazi chants. So after this, it's really interesting when white liberals are like, oh my God, RBN, the black network is against Nazis? And I see someone already saying this. Or is our money funding Russian Nazis? I'm just asking that question. So once again, we gotta have discipline. What country can we hold accountable? Our taxpayer money is funding Nazis. So I oppose that at all costs. What do Russia have to do with that? I'm legitimately asking for people that got the same sentiment. So as a black man in this country I stand against Nazism in all its forms. Progressives are like, punch a Nazi, but they only talk about people who vote Republican. If you're a Nazi and you support the Democratic Party, if you against Putin, it's an open tent. We're all for you. So Eric is like, why are you not worried about Russian Nazi? For one, there are two countries that voted against an international referendum to condemn Nazism. One was Ukraine, and the other was the United States. Two countries voted to condemn Nazism: Ukraine and the United States.
And voted not to condemn Nazism.
Yeah, voted to not condemn Nazism. I think I got it wrong, did I? But anyway, Russia is the one who proposed that. So Russia condemns their Nazis. The Ukrainians like, oh, we can't condemn our Nazis. The U.S. said, oh, we can't do that because at that same time, the U.S. was proposing arms deals to give to Nazis. And Ro Khanna years ago called that out. And then he deleted his tweet. He was like, why are we funding Ukrainian Nazis? Then he deleted it because we're not supposed to. Remember, we got amnesia since 2022. So you have anything you want to add before you...
Yeah, and this is exactly like a talking point that's pushed by these NAFO accounts, which, by the way, I remember Margaret Kimberly on your show talking about how she's never seen it this bad, and neither have I. And
yeah, me neither.
So these NAFO accounts, anytime I say anything on Twitter, I'm jumped on by like 30 accounts pushing this kind of anti-Russian propaganda. So yes, there's definitely Nazis in Russia. They're a small faction. They're shamed. This is a country that during Soviet times defeated the Nazis. There's national hatred for fascism in all its forms. In Ukraine, since 2014, thanks to CIA and US intervention, Nazism spread, and Western Ukrainians, which are really different from Eastern Ukrainians, supported the Nazis and collaborated with them during World War II. So first of all, the historical background is different. Second of all, today, Nazism is institutionalized in Ukraine. It's in the leadership, it's in the military, it's on the street signs, as Nick said, it's on the stamps, it's glorified, it's taught in schools. So comparing a faction that exists in a country compared to an ideology that's gone mainstream is very different things.
Mainstream. Like, we keep seeing these videos, and there's these constant examples of the mainstream media showing like people at the highest levels in the Ukrainian army, and then they will have swastikas on, and like, oops, accidentally found the small amount of Nazis we claim exist. They claim there's a small amount, but they keep highlighting the ones with swastikas. And this is just a fact that everyone used to know about. There's a great article from Minpress News a few years ago. This is well known. The FBI used to talk about this stuff. Corporate media used to talk about this stuff. Neo-Nazi militia trained by U.S. military in Ukraine now training U.S. white supremacists. And that's why I said, people wonder why RBN, a black network, is speaking out against this. This is our enemy. Why as a black man in the United States, will you support the West's ambitions of geopolitical dominance after what they did to our people, but then also the unification between Nazis in the West that happened post-World War II? I got receipts I'm going to show you of how NATO implemented Nazis. Like, this is not even a conspiracy theory anymore. It's well known. What is that? I forgot the exact term. But anyway, I'll bring the receipts up later. So let's get to NAFO, because once again, the title is not a typo. Not NAFO, whatever. The North Atlantic Fellows Organization. See, it's a play on words because no one supports NATO in the West. No one. How many people do you in your ordinary life before this conflict was like, man, it's extremely important that we accomplish the expansion of NATO? No one. So once we start at first people were like, oh my gosh, crazy Russia invade. So there was initial fervor, like, man, we gotta support Ukraine. But then they see the money. Biden, they just send another $750 million to Ukraine. Just read that today. Another package. So even though people may got like caught up, like, oh my God, we must defend Ukraine. At first, after the insanity kept going, after it was clear that Europe was going to starve, after the insane Ukraine packages, that's like at 65 billion at this point. I may be undercounting it. They knew that people would turn against the war, especially when the economic consequences, the quote unquote Putin price hike, is felt. So in this age of information, when you have the merger between big tech and our corporate oligarchs, this new era of corporate fascism, they knew they had to do information control. Like every war is filled with propaganda. But like Murray Kimberly said on our show, this is the most propagandized war I have seen, at least since the Iraq War. But there wasn't social media. This is the first real social media war psyop that the West is pulling on us. So they put out NAFO. And if you look up NAFO, it's full of cringe, where it's obviously an intelligence agency. It's obviously an intelligence agency that is responsible for this, obviously funded by NATO, whatever. It's the establishment. Because how many like organic groups are being covered by the Washington Post? You had the Ukrainian defense. This is what I had earlier. This is why I had pulled up. The defense of Ukraine, and this is what they had. They had all these dog cringe stuff, Gen Z stuff that I honestly don't really understand. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just cringe. But they post all these like memes and call people Putin bots. But the most devastating thing is how many people they got demonetized, how many people they got censored because they are this giant bot farm that reports people for speaking out against the Ukrainian conflict, which is why this is relevant. Because the Democratic Party And there are many of their blue checks that you guys probably have seen if you're not on Twitter. Many blue check Democrats, liberals, they retweet, gave shout outs to NAFO. Like, oh my God, look at these organic people who standing for Ukraine. Surely organic. All the politicians tweeting it out. The defense of Ukraine, they said we usually express gratitude to our international partners for their security assistance. But today we want to give a shout out to a unique entity, the North Atlantic Fellas Organization. Thanks for the fierce fight against Kremlin propaganda and trolls. We salute you, fellas. And it's very obvious what this is. Like, you see, I'm trying to show you guys like some stuff they will post. Cause I blocked so many. Like, you see, this is one of them. I had to block so many of them because they was all like,
It's insane. I block hundreds per day, and there's still more. We got some NAFO trolls in the chat right now.
Oh yeah, I knew that. I for sure knew because I did the title like. Before I made a stream, I'm like, I don't know if I should do this because I'm probably get our channel taken down by even mentioning them. But go ahead, Zoya.
I mean, this is where the billions that we're sending to Ukraine are going, these troll farms. And a lot of them, when friends of ours have done digging, has been exposed that their K-Hive is now repurposed as NAFO.
Yep.
It's the same tactics to silence anybody that's talking of facts and label it as Russian propaganda. It is not Russian propaganda that there was a Minsk agreement in place. It is not Russian propaganda that Putin warned against NATO expansion for 2 decades. It is not Russian propaganda that Ukrainian corruption was in every headline in New York Times, Washington Post. It is not Russian propaganda that the bombings of civilians in the Donbas region were recorded by Amnesty International. And the murder of civilians and children were all recorded by Red Cross and these groups because they were coming in to give aid. We do not use Russian sources. I don't look at Russian sources at all. I have family and friends in Ukraine on the ground, which one more thing that lately from talking to people there, they're being force drafted into this war now. Men of serving age cannot get out. Their wives and children, a lot of them have gone out already. And they are being forced literally at gunpoint. They told me because I'm like, leave, get out of there. This is not going to end anytime soon. And dying for rich men wars is no way to go. And they're saying we absolutely can't leave. They line us up. They force us to go in. And there are snipers behind us that will shoot anybody that refuses to go in or turns back or tries to leave.
Wow. So that's why I'm glad Zoya joined us. She got a lot of great anecdotes like that because she's talking to, once again, like activists on the ground. I want to show, because when you see the rabid support of robbing, this is a Ukrainian money laundering scheme. It's so obvious. The black market, like they're liberal to say, oh, we are against gun violence. I'm a liberal, I'm against gun violence, but they just sent a massive flood of arms to the black market. That now organizations are warning that white supremacist groups are going to be trained, they're going to be armed, and then they're going to bring that white supremacy back home. There are a ton of Nazis in Brazil that are volunteering. Obviously, Nazis in the U.S., white supremacists in the U.S. There are the white supremacists in France. All these people, all these Nazis that know what the Azov Battalion is about, that's why they volunteered to have this expansion to wipe out the Asiatic Russian horde in their Caucasian motherland, right? So these are common, like these people are now going to come home armed. And people are wondering why a black network is speaking out against this. The people who cheer for this are not real. Once again, I'm a citizen journalist. I was at the Casey Tenants rally. I had my mutual aid event we have here, talking to ordinary people. I don't see one Ukraine flag. Look outside. No, not one goddamn Ukraine flag. But if you go online, if you go on Twitter, type Ukraine, I had a ton of these people blocked. You look at that tweet, you still see a ton of them. The same with AOC, we're going to get to this later. AOC support is 100% astroturfed. The G Hive, the new AOC Hive, that shit is not fucking real. AOC did have a town hall in Brooklyn, and it was fucking empty. AOC is astroturfed. The support for the Ukraine war is astroturfed. Everything they said Russia was doing in Russiagate, the West is doing in response. And you had, this is the Washington Post, legitimizing this troll farm because they are all in on it. Here's the Washington Post. I can't click the article because I'm locked because I ain't paying for that shit. But it said, this whole article is cringe. I've seen like snippets on Twitter here and there. Analysis. With NAFO, Ukraine turned the trolls on Russia. And there's a whole article, and there are many examples of mainstream media articles where like, oh my god, it's great. Isn't it great we have NAFO fighting against Russian information? It's just this organic movement of young, savvy tech people that stand for Ukraine. Get the fuck out of here. And they made people who speaking up against this war on social media their life hell. They're everywhere. And they are there to censor the truth. But go ahead, Zoe, if you want to.
You got 2 super chats. I'll read the first one because it's a question. Question for Zoe and Nick. Is it better to block NAFO trolls or push back against them?
And the thing is, I rarely block people, but I've been blocking these actual troll farms because now RBN is getting bigger. I'm account almost at 100K. I can't deal with that. I used to fight. I used to love fighting people. I literally just can't deal with it anymore. So just because it's too much, guys, it's literally too much for me to deal with. So I just block people now. I can't, especially with those guys. I used to troll them back, but it's just so fucking much. So many of them will come after you so fast. No rational person will be like, this is organic. And then they are the people who got people like Jackson demonetized, who got Mint Press News demonetized, because this troll forum will organize mass reports on people who are speaking out against the Ukraine crisis, which is why this is relevant. This intelligence agencies and the establishment creating this organization that they are feigning as outsiders that censors people who speak out against the war effort. Like when Jose called out AOC, the guy we had on our show, when I call out AOC on the Ukraine, when I'll call out Bernie Sanders and AOC and progressives on the Ukraine funding, and I'll see NAFO people in there. They're designed to protect the establishment. That and the net, what we're gonna get to here very soon is how, just like the whole Ukrainian Nazi thing that we covered just now, the person who started NAFO is a fucking Nazi, a Hitler sympathizing Nazi. Shock that liberals in the Democratic Party in Washington Post and all these people was propping up another organization ran by fascists. Thank you for the $20. That's solidarity super chat. I appreciate you, Lynn Johnson. So let me get to the headline, because the headline is the NAFO being started by literally a Nazi. So apparently Ukrainian Nazis are a myth. The Nazi supporters that supported NATO are a myth, even though they implement them into the organizations. I'm gonna cover that here soon. But look at this. NAFO founder, now this is going everywhere now. NAFO founder Camille, I'm not gonna try that. Do you know how to pronounce it? I don't know how to say those names.
I pronounce it Nazi.
I love you so much. Is an anti-Semitic gamer from Poland. Now, look at this. Look at this here. He did one of those, I don't know, the quiz or whatever that said stop to find out which dictator you are. And he, like, I don't know, like, this is a quiz, or he posted a picture, and then this is his account. He says, nice, when being compared to Adolf Hitler. And as reported, as explained by Zoya, by many people who cover the Ukrainian Nazis, there are many Ukrainians that they don't view Hitler with this disdain that we do, that the West quote unquote do. There are many Ukrainians that look up, they're like, oh yeah, Hitler was a misunderstood soul. That is the ideology of the Azerbaijani of Stefan Banderas. This is the guy who started NAFO. And there's so many receipts, because I guess they found his Twitter. And then this is like all the receipts of his Holocaust denial, anti-Semitism. I'm not gonna go through all of them. I'll go through just a few, just so you guys get context. But there's so many. And this is him doing Holocaust denial here. Some more examples of anti-Semitism that he tweeted out. And then there's the Hitler apologia. Him posting all these pictures of Hitler. He promoting all these fascists or whatever. This quote, the world is not dying, it's being killed, and those who are killing it have names and addresses. This shows the Azov neo-Nazi ideology that led them to purge ethnic Russians, because they view Russian not being Caucasian. Russians are not the blonde hair, blue-eyed darlings. They view them as Asians. The Russian, the ideology from the neo-Nazis in Ukraine, they view Russians as the weak former Caucasians that was colonized and bastardized by the Mongolians. So they no longer view them as having a pure bloodline, which is why they have strong anti-Russian hate that coming from the Azov Battalion and neo-Nazis. Not going to hear Cal Kalinske explain this. Now in mainstream media. Very common knowledge that people used to report on all the time. Here he's cheering, killing peaceful protesters. So I'm not going to go through all these because there's a lot of personal flaws of this guy. But there's so many examples of him posting pro-fascist Nazi ideology here. And that is the founder of NAFO. There's a few good takes. Here's Caitlin Johnstone. She said, I'm still laughing about how liberals just spent months amplifying and celebrating a trolling operation founded by a literal Nazi. We got to stand against Nazi. Hey, Zoya, punch a Nazi, but we're going to fund them. We're going to write articles about them, but punch a Nazi, though.
That's our healthcare money running these operations. If it doesn't make you angry, I don't know what will. And they're definitely, as far as earlier, like definitely block them and don't engage because they're designed to distract us. They're designed to drain our energy. They're not having some debate in good faith or have, just naively been misled. These people respond with childish insults and just memes and say the most outrageous things. And it's meant to trigger us. So, of course, block them.
And they mass report. And that's why I block it as well because Cyber gave him great. He's like, don't. They mass report. That's how they get A1 channels down. So people who respond, then they get the green light, and then the whole army swarms in. Goes like, oh, we got one. Then they mass report. So I'm like, oh, can't get RBN pulled. So this is what I said at the beginning of the stream. At what point is it not hyperbole? Which I don't think it is. This is a rhetorical question because when the Cal Kalinskis, when the Social Democrats see our coverage, RBN's coverage of this. They say, oh my God, you guys being hyperbolic, saying that that AOC funding Nazis. That's what Cal said. If they say AOC funding Nazis, you're being hyperbolic. This is not hyperbole. At what point is it not when you say the Democrat Party Nazi sympathizers? And that was the question I asked, and most people said it's not. Our friend Comrade Misty, it's never been hyperbolic. It haven't been. And this is some more examples. These guys just posted some Democrats doing Hitler apologia, saying that it's not new. I didn't see that. I just thought that was interesting. I didn't see that personally. Here's Ben Norton's response. A literal Hitler-admiring Nazi founded the NAFO propaganda operation, which is publicly supported by U.S. government to wage information war on Russia. And once again, I'll show you guys a few receipts, but there have been so many of these blue checks, reporters, and I'm talking about government Ukrainian officials that shout out to NAFO. Big shout out to NAFO. I love the NAFO boys. This is their ideology.
Well, because Ukraine actually stands no chance of beating Russia. If you look at Russian stockpiles and understand that Russia is one of the greatest military powers on earth, that's not to stand for Russia. That's just a fact. And everybody acknowledged these facts before all of this started. And the only thing that they could win in order to justify sending Ukraine billions upon billions, and there will be more, is in the court of public opinion. So they're fighting this information war. And I just sent you a receipt, Nick, in our DMs that shows a former Ukrainian official admitting that they're running these information wars.
Oh shit! Here we go. Zoya with the receipts. Zoya is love. Zoya is life. Too powerful in the streets. So I'll just stall for time while I pull it up. Here it is. Here it is. So this is the tweet that Zoya. I haven't seen it, so we watched it for the first time. The tweet says former Ukrainian Denisova said thinking. She is speaking to Michael. So she's thinking she's speaking to Michael McFall, admits she was distributing fakes about atrocities by Russian armies. And remember, that's exactly what we cover on the show. The Ukrainian government and their officials keep saying, oh my God, Russia is committing war crimes. And then the media will report it uncritically. And that's not me saying that these things doesn't happen. I'm just saying that you do not get your source. When anything said, according to Ukrainian government officials, toss it in the trash. Toss it in the trash. So anyway, let's play the video.
Больше гражданин. Если он гражданин,
Fine. We got subtitles, so I guess I'll read it out here. She says, a patriotic citizen, a real patriotic citizen can't write that I attained some benefits or made something up. Also, wow, okay, so in fact, they don't do investigations. I say fakes are kind of a weapon too. And sometimes when you exaggerate or make something up, but for the good, this is pretty much, I know this is a Ukrainian person saying this, but do not mistake, this is 100% the ideology of John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and all the neocons in the United States. Whenever you hear Joe Biden and his press secretary constantly lie, that is their ideology. This is not just Ukraine.
100%. And the thing that, drives me kind of crazy is everyone in America has amnesia. These are the same people that lied us into the war in Iraq with weapons of mass destruction. And now you think they're being honest. They lied about Libya. They lied about Somalia. They lied about everything. And you think this one time they're being honest?
Oh, come on, man. You don't think that Joe Biden really care about the Ukrainian people, Zoya? You guys don't like these people know that the West engaged in propaganda. They know that every war, the United States lies about everything. That was the Afghan paper exposed. The Vietnam War was all lies. But they will know that fact. But then when the next war comes up, they fall for it again. The same way Jank and TYT fell for the Syria propaganda. Like and Vosh as well. They were like, oh yeah, the West always lies. But then when the next war happens, they're the first people to fall for it. So let me see. I think I got one more. So yeah, here's another receipts. I think the last one in this segment, and then we get to the AOC story, and then we wrap up. I don't think the AOC story should be that long. But anyway, if you didn't know, NATO absorbed a shocking number of Nazi military leaders into position of power. I'll name a few. And this is to my point I made earlier. What the West didn't defeat Nazism, they incorporated it. The Western Nazism has been one and intertwined since the beginning of the United States. That's why Nazis in Nazi Germany said they learned from the genocide that the United States engaged on the indigenous people. The laws that they implemented on Jewish people during the Holocaust was directly stolen from the Black codes and how the United States treated Black people in the 1800s. So people like Nazi is a new, it was a new formal ideology in a political party, but it wasn't new.
There's a book on it called The American Model for anybody interested in reading how Hitler got his inspiration from America.
Yeah, well said. It was I guess they gave it a term, but not only was it was just a more modified version of what they already did, what they inspired to do. And then when Nazi Germany lost, they was like, we didn't defeat the ideology, we adopted it. The same thing that happened to the Democratic Party now. When the Democrats beat Donald Trump, they didn't crush Trumpism, they adopted Trumpism. They funded and expanded all his policies. They funded apartheid Israel. They escalated against Iran. They want to coup Venezuela. The same thing that Trump did. It's the same ideology with NATO in World War II. So let's get into this. Because I don't know all these by heart, so this is good for reference for me too. Adolf Hausinger helped plan invasions of Poland and France as chief of staff for the Nazi army. He was responsible for millions of brutal fascist murders. NATO appointed him chairman of the NATO Military Committee in 1961. U.S. made him commander of the U.S. Legion in merit. These are things they don't teach us in school. They don't teach us this in school. That's why I need a cheat sheet, because I don't know this stuff on top of my head. I always gotta read it. Hans Speidel was chief of staff to Nazi General Erwin Rommel during World War II. NATO made him supreme commander of ground forces in Central Europe in 1957. Oh, but Nick, why are you speaking about NATO? Why are you speaking out against NATO expansion? Zoya, why are you speaking out against NATO? Zoya from the USSR. Why are you speaking out against Nazis though? They only
my grandfathers literally were at war and killed Nazis, and meanwhile Ukraine is tearing down statues of Zoya Kosmidemyanskaya, who was a Soviet hero who fought Nazis and was executed publicly and brutally in Ukraine. They're tearing down her statues in Ukraine right now. They're tearing down statues of Pushkin, who was a biracial poet considered the best in Russian Russian literature and the founder of modern Russian. They're tearing down his statues. But you want to say that, this is all Russian propaganda. And by the way, another thing I just don't want to forget to mention is that Sweden stopped the investigation of the explosion on the Nord Stream pipeline. Why would they stop the investigation? Why do they keep stopping investigations into Donbass, into the Nord Stream pipeline? If the truth is so obvious, wouldn't they want that exposed?
Well said. So they want to censor this truth because it's stuff that the mainstream media used to write about all the time. So now I'm gonna show you this. See, I covered this before. RBN is probably one of the few places that you can find this kind of coverage, because if currently, like if you look at Kyle coverage of this, when you look at all the TRT coverage of this, they say if you say there are Nazis in Ukraine, you're repeating Putin propaganda. Cenk just called Jimmy a Putin apologist for saying that. Now this was a prominent journalist. He wrote for the biggest newspaper in Poland. Like, it would be similar. I don't know if it's 100% the same, but it'd be very similar to someone who writes for the New York Times, Washington Post. He was very prominent. I tweeted this out this April. So this is when this thing really started to escalate, right? He quit one of Poland's more prominent he quit one of the biggest newspaper because he was getting pressure to whitewash the Azov battalion. So he got pressure. I'm going to read the receipts here. And now, when I read this, keep in mind all the journalists who conceded to this pressure. Polish journalist quits after it demands different description of neo-Nazi Ukrainian militia. One of Poland's most prominent journalists said he's quitting what many regard as the country's newspaper of record, like the New York Times of Poland, after it demanded that he describe Ukraine's controversial Azov battalion as far-right instead of neo-Nazis. Now, I explained this before on the show. History is written by the winners. The West has completely engaged and incorporated Nazism into their goal of full-spectrum dominance. We just had Wyatt Reed on, and he reports on Ukraine on the ground. And he is talking to teachers, journalists, and reporters. The amount of pressure that being applied on people on the ground in Ukraine to whitewash Nazis and repeat the Western agenda is intense. And the people who don't, you could get killed by the Ukrainian government, and they kill these people because they say, oh, they're a Russian sympathizer, they're Russian ops. If you call the Azov Battalion, for example, a Nazi organization, they would say, oh, look, you work for Putin, you repeat Putin lines, kill that person. And there have been bodies of mass graves. Once again, why we reported on. We take our information from journalists on the ground instead of the corporate media, Ukrainian officials, right? So this is the censorship that's going on in Russia and Ukraine. And leftists, anyone who's anti-imperialist, we cannot stand for this. We got to correct the record. We got to do it aggressively because history is written by the winners. And what the West want, they want to ban, they want to censor. If they can, like countries like Ukraine, they will kill, imprison anyone who speak out against this, rewrite history. And then in 20, 30 years, there are going to be no mentions of Nazis in Ukraine. The same way that a lot of people didn't know, like, if you look at like early school education in the 20s to 50s, they didn't teach about the genocide of Native Americans. That was one of the things that it was so loud, and then it became so far away that they started slightly mentioning it. They still do a bad job talking about it. They slightly mentioned the treatment. But back in the day, they never talk about it because they won. They was trying to whitewash that. If they are successful in 30 years, there's going to be no record of the Maidan coup. There's going to be no record of the Ukraine banning the Russian language, of shelling the Donbass and killing Eastern Ukrainians. That's why we speak up, and that's why we call the people out who are complicit with this, unlike AOC. I think that's a good transition, right?
Nick, check out the last screenshot I sent you. Just really quick to illustrate a point.
All right, let's do that, and then we get to the AOC story, because this live, I only meant to this live be an hour. Look how bad I am at time management. But I definitely got to cover the AOC story. But anyway, anti-Soviet warrior puts his army on the road to peace.
Anyone recognize who that is? Just to show you guys how they shape the narrative when it's convenient for them.
Amen. I think that's a good exclamation mark on that segment. Oh, I didn't save the link. Anyway, I'll just tweet about it so I can find it. So I'm gonna cover it. I don't think this segment should be long. This is a fun segment. I covered Israel slaughtering Palestinians, debunking Russian propaganda, and explain to you guys how troll farms and the information war works. Now let's have some fun because we just was covering
debunking Ukrainian propaganda.
What I say?
Russian propaganda.
Oh yeah, Ukraine. Well,
NAFO's getting to us. But last thing to tie up that segment before we start having a good time with AOC. You can find Putin's speech after Putin's speech where you can ignore everything he's saying, but he's just on record offering diplomacy. He's been on record for the last 2 decades offering diplomacy, while NATO is planning this week to do nuclear strategic exercises 400 miles from Russia's border. Putin keeps asking for peace, and Zelensky and Biden are saying that they're refusing to negotiate. Now, every war and this war will end in diplomacy. The only difference is going to be the body count and the amount of money laundering that goes on before that happens. But this will end in diplomacy. So my official position as someone that has family in Russia and in Ukraine, as someone that is an anti-war activist, is to push for diplomacy right now. That's all I'm asking for is diplomacy so that people do not die, except the offer that Russia is making to sit down at the table and negotiate.
Well said, Zoya. And history is going to look, I'll put this banner up. History is going to look back at like Bernie, AOC, and the squad. Their legacy will forever be being complicit with the escalatory nuclear war that's about to happen because they voted for arms to Taiwan. They voted to expand NATO after Russia made a nuclear threat and then backed off of that. And then now they funded Ukrainian Nazis, and then people like AOC is being called out. And I explained to you guys how they have NAFO, AstroTurfs. AOC is 100% AstroTurf because when AOC was called out for Ukrainian funding, and these progressive frauds, they think they can vote on something as important as this war. Vote for $60 billion to Nazis, and they think they can just not give any explanation to that. That is an unhinged position to take as a politician. I'm gonna make a vote on war, and then we're gonna demonize anyone who asks questions about it. The right wing and corporate Democrats, they will come down and give press conferences. I stand with Ukraine. We got to fight against Putin. We got to fight against authoritarian. Then you had the Marjorie Taylor Greene. They will give public statements like, yeah, and they may be talking shit, but they were like, oh yeah, we can't. We got people that are struggling at home. You spend all this money on this proxy war. Like this is what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, right? But the point being, they are saying something about it. Bernie and AOC and the progressives at this point, it's a coordinated strategy not to talk about it. They're going to vote in favor of the war. And you don't question it because the job of the outside game, according to them, is to shut the fuck up and fall in line. And that is something that RBN strongly rejects. So I'm going to cover AOC embarrassing approval rating. You guys see the title, AOC as unpopular Hillary Clinton. Why do you guys think that is? And so feel free to interrupt me anytime if you want to chime in. But I explained this concept before. Even if you disagree with me, and you support the strategy of Justice Democrats. So you disagree with me. You think that you should take over the Democratic Party. We need a giant progressive movement that's going to hijack the Democratic Party. The reason why I abandoned this plan is because I realized that the people on the inside had no idea what the fuck they were doing. Because even if you disagree with me, their tactics makes no sense. So, for example, if you want to take out corporate Democrats, you need to make the difference between you and the corporate Democrats instead of you coming out and saying Biden is doing a great job. Instead of voting for Nancy Pelosi, you don't vote for Nancy Pelosi. And then when the headlines start to roll and people start demonizing you like you was afraid of, then you explain, I don't vote for Nancy Pelosi because she's complicit in war crimes. She's an inside traitor. She don't support Medicare for all. You start to fight. You start to separate yourself from the Democratic Party. Yeah, I know Marjorie Taylor Greene is not anti-war. I was making a point. God damn. See one of the comments in there. I was obviously making a point. But anyway, you had the Democratic Party that is massively unpopular. Joe Biden in the Democratic Party, the most unpopular president and vice president in modern American history. If your job is to separate yourself so people will vote for the progressive base over you, how does it make sense for you to then praise that party? For you to tell people that this party, the lesser two evils, that we got to support them, we got to be supportive of their agendas instead of calling out where their agenda is falling short? How does it make sense to tie yourself to the unpopular Democratic Party? So, even though AOC supports popular policies, she supports Medicare for all, support legalization of weed, support all these popular things that the Democratic Party don't support. People tie AOC to the Democratic Party, which she deserves. So you will see when I'm gonna pull up the receipt here, you're gonna see that AOC had the same approval rating as a lot of these corporate Democrats do. Because instead of doing the smart thing, which I advocate for, even when I was part of the Bernie movement, when I see Bernie call Joe Biden his friend, them voting for Nancy Pelosi, them doing all these things, it made no sense to me. Like that doesn't even make sense based on what your strategy is. You need to separate yourself from the party. When people think of AOC, and Bernie numbers fell too. He used to be net positive. Now he's zero. Bernie has fallen because people who used to see Bernie as independent, now they just see him as a Democratic sheep herder. They see AOC, and this is what the right-wing talk news put out there, and a lot of things they say about AOC is true. So a lot of it, what they say, is not true. But the message that they put out there is that AOC is an agent of the Democratic Party, and she gives you zero reason to think otherwise. So in the middle of a pandemic, while Joe Biden is a war criminal, keeping kids in cages, literally sending COVID relief money to the police, AOC is tweeting about January 6th.
You got to support that.
She was live tweeting the January 6th trial as if people in the Bronx gives a fuck. I added a poll. Maybe I can find it. I don't have it saved. But I covered this poll where it said most Americans, their opinion haven't changed after the trial. There been another poll. Most Americans don't give a fuck. And then I said before on Twitter, and a lot of progressives got mad at me. I'm like, bro, voters do not care about this. Why are you guys tweeting about this? They're like, oh my God, look at you sympathizing with Trump and MAGA. Said no such thing. I just said that people do not care about this stupid shit. They care about you appealing to their material interests. So I'm gonna get to the polling. I'm gonna report on this. People see AOC live tweeting January 6th, talking about my life is in danger January 6th. Then she votes for Ukraine proxy war funding. Then she vote for arms to Taiwan. Vote president for like then. So people, whether you agree with her or not, they see her as an agent of the Democratic Party. And why will you do that when the Democratic Party is historically unpopular? I can't make it bigger, so I'll read it out. So you get a list of all of these politicians here. The most unpopular is Mitch McConnell at -22, deserved. You have Joe Manchin who had -15. AOC is at -12 because despite AOC fans hating my guts for criticizing her, despite the fact they put blinders on the missteps of the Bernie Sanders movement, the Bernie Sanders movement, especially since he dropped out, you can argue he's always been a failure, but especially after Bernie dropped out, has been a failure to connect with workers. Whether you agree with that or not, that is true. Whether you hate me for saying that, that is just a fact. And the reason why I say AOC is about as unpopular as Hillary Clinton, because look at Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, -13. AOC, -12. Kamala Harris, -10. AOC is more unpopular Then Kamala Harris, according to this one poll, I do want to be careful because I know polls can be bullshit. But just for the sake of discourse, we're talking about this poll. Because I know maybe a different poll with a different number. But according to this particular poll, Kamala Harris is AOC is more unpopular than Kamala Harris because they've just been ineffective. Just for some other interesting tidbits, Ron DeSantis +6. And to be honest, if I was to guess, it seems like this poll does have a conservative lean. I'll be like, to be 100% honest, definitely seems like this lean conservative. Mike Pence +4, Donald Trump 0, Ted Cruz 0. I don't know, man. Tim Scott +3. So if I was to be 100% fair, this does seem like you got a conservative lean. I would love to see like the breakdown on this. But the reason why I tweet this out, because Ro Khanna tweeted out. So it's not like this is a poll that right-wingers are pushing out. Ro Khanna tweeted out, and the point that he made was that Bernie Sanders is still the most popular Democratic senator. Democratic politician. Yeah, so he had to he was very careful with how he phrased that. With how he phrased that, it's true. But even with that said, what he's leaving out is Bernie Sanders fell. He used to be in the positives. And the reason why I think he fell, the same analysis I have for AOC. People see him as just a Democratic sheep herder instead of the I that he used to be. Instead of the independent that he used to be. So his point was to rah-rah Bernie Sanders. And I point out, because I was like, I'm a nerd. I love looking at the data. I know that AOC is as unpopular as Hillary Clinton. Another reason why this poll definitely tilts to the right and is definitely worrying is the approvals for the U.S. military, Amazon police, Ukraine, CDC. But polls are very manipulative. And I've played this many times. Well, they would just say, what are your thoughts about the U.S. military? What are your thoughts about Amazon? What are your thoughts about the police? Maybe and I covered this yesterday. When asked, do people want to defund the police, reallocate resources? People support that. But if you ask them a question like, oh, what's your view on the police? They're like, oh, yeah, I think they're all right. They will want to defund them, though. So just to be 100% honest with you guys, I do think this poll is right-wing tilting. But AOC, her numbers should be where Bernie's at. And with all my criticism of Bernie Sanders, and I got a lot of them, Bernie has been one of the most popular senators because he didn't, for the most part, he really sunk low recently. But for the most part, he didn't follow the Democratic Party culture war, the Democratic Party line. Like he called for Barack Obama to be primary, right? He called out the Democratic Party for being too far right on Obamacare. So once again, I cannot emphasize enough. I had a lot of criticism of Bernie, but Bernie has a different approach. Like Bernie not showing up at the Met Gala. He's not doing stupid shit like that. So that's why people may still see Bernie as being independent. And if AOC focused on just pure kitchen table issues, which she does not, AOC spends her time having Twitter beefs with Ted Cruz. She live streams and posts about January 6th. She talking about getting nail confirmation cosmetics done to her. Do you remember the exact phrase that she used? She's like, I have this affirmation for myself, getting her nails done. So even my criticism of Bernie, I do believe Bernie have been a more effective progressive leader than AOC because he don't give this illusion to people that he's just this Democratic talking point head. But I do think, once again, I say this with the knowledge that Bernie has fallen a lot over the last 2 years. But AOC, straight up Nancy Pelosi style politics with an occasional mention of saying, oh, I like Medicare for all, even though she didn't tweet about it for a whole year. So, Zoe, any thoughts that you have on this guy? I don't want this to be too long of a segment, but you guys see AOC is as unpopular as Hillary Clinton because whether you agree or disagree with my politics, I say leave the Democratic Party. Even if you support the Justice Democrats and the idea of taking over the Democratic Party, you must admit AOC has been ineffective. AOC has been ineffective at building the progressive movement. Progressive wiped out this election year. Why do you think they bootlicking John Fetterman? He's the only one they got left because for one, AOC abandoned a ton of progressives and supported corporate Democrats, and then in these high key races, her endorsement doesn't mean shit. So if you're mad because I criticize AOC because I don't support Democrats, okay. But if you support taking over the Democrat Party, you should be criticizing AOC because she's a bad leader. Anyway, Zoya, any words on this topic?
I mean, it's really tragic because the Bernie movement and then all these progressives like AOC and Ilhan Omar and all of our so-called progressives, they really captured the working classes enthusiasm. They gave them hope, and people were donating money they didn't have. They were donating their last $20. People were sacrificing grocery money to get these politicians into power. So when we're criticizing them, it's so different from criticizing someone like Nancy Pelosi, because these people were supposed to represent us. They weren't taking corporate cash, and they said they're willing to be one-term Congress people and that they're going to fight for our policies. And ever since then, we've seen them completely acquiesce to all of the Democratic talking points. They're voting for war, an unquestionable leftist position, and they haven't taken up a single fight. And they took our money, our energy, in order to get into power. So this is a massive betrayal. And now when we try to hold them accountable just on the facts, so I never attacked them personally. I don't care, if she's getting her nails done or not, but just their voting record. If you just look at their voting record, you would never know that these people are progressive in any kind of way. And when we're pointing out these facts, we get called poon puppets, or, we're told like they're the best we got. It doesn't matter. If they're the best we got, then we need to change strategies, because this is not good enough. If the best we got is voting for the military industrial complex and to empower the police, then they're not good at all. The best, like it's like saying like, well, that's the best Nazi we got. That it doesn't matter. Factually, they're opposed to our agenda. They're opposed to workers' needs, and we absolutely must hold them accountable and call them out. And the fact that this gets backlash because of celebrity worship, because of fear that like, well, what are we going to have then? We have to forge a different path, but everything starts at the truth. If we can't just acknowledge the facts, then we have nothing and we are truly lost. And AOC has betrayed the working class. She never comes out to any sort of general strikes or shows worker solidarity unless there's a photo op opportunity. She shows up for 15 minutes. And as Nick has pointed out many times, she has a massive platform. Even if you buy into the fact that legislatively she can't achieve much, she could lend support to grassroots actions with her massive platform. And she doesn't. She has thrown people under the bus. She has turned down activists, and she always plays victim, which I find grotesque. That's what she just did when Jose called her out too. She was like, oh, he was talking over a deaf person, and then it was exposed that wasn't true at all. So I'm sorry, but when people lie to my face, I will always call it out. And I do not support anybody that is going to tell us that we can't have any better, because we must. Our people are dying. There are 600,000 people that slept on the streets of the wealthiest country on earth last night. And there's nothing that will make me be okay with that, no matter what AOC tells us.
And they're there to kill revolutionary energy and your anger. Oh man, come on, chill. Just vote blue. We just vote blue, everything be okay. And now I'm gonna explain one last thing, and then we wrap up. People always say, "Why are you so mean to these people that they agree with you on these progressive ideas?" Once again, we gotta learn some discipline, and we gotta acknowledge that unlike the corporate Democrats and the neocon Republicans, we do not have an unlimited amount of funds. There is an X, whatever this number is, a finite amount of resources that the working class have. That number we don't know. We usually know at the end of the year. Bernie raised hundreds of millions of dollars between his two runs. Imagine that money went to mutual aid. Imagine that went to our community. Imagine that went to Tour for the Poor. Imagine donating money to Cori Bush instead of Rome. Do you guys see what a misstep of the U.S. left has made over the last few years? So not only do they take money from workers, they take money from workers, black, indigenous, brown workers, and then fund Nazis. There is no bigger betrayal. Joe Manchin, who funds Nazis, gets his money from corporate America. Joe Manchin and his corporate Democratic ilk, they get their money from corporations. So then if you vote for them, their reaction is kind of like, look at this dumbass voting for me. When you donate to them, they're like, look at this dumbass donating to me. I didn't ask you. But Bernie and AOC, they take no corporate money, and then they ask us for money, take millions of dollars from the workers, and then betray us, and then side-eye us and scoff at us when we ask them to explain their votes. Do you guys understand the failed strategy of the Justice Democrats now? It is only working for the professional managerial class.
AOC's campaign video for this last time she ran said that Medicare for all, canceling college debt. We don't have to wait for these things. We can have these things right now. Then as soon as she got into power, it turned into like, whoa, guys, we can't have these things right now. Who would suggest such a thing to you? So it's funny that they go against their own words. Like literally 2016 AOC would have been calling out 2022 AOC on her current positions.
She 100% would. They'll. I don't know how that's stupid now. I really don't. I'll leave it there. I gotta wrap up soon. Thank you for $5, Scott. AOC is Puerto Rican. Why not call for arming independence fighters in Puerto Rico? I never even thought about that. That's a great point. So AOC funding Nazis in Ukraine, but not calling for arming independent fighters in Puerto Rico because there's a giant movement for Puerto Rican independence. Like she vote for arms to Ukraine and Taiwan. Very interesting. Very great super chat. Thank you for that, Scott. I'm just trying to do a quick scroll. Make sure hopefully I didn't miss any other super chats. I appreciate the ones that we did get. Let's see, did I start any other ones? There are a few solidarity ones I showed up. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. And please get involved in your communities. I was just at the Casey Tennis rally. Rome was just delivering water to Jackson, Mississippi. And next weekend, we're going to have an amazing activist summit. We're going to start announcing guests, but we got union organizers. We got workers that are about to be on strike. I got Casey Tens that agree. We're still working out of time. Savvy got a lot of great guests. Joe Stein, the Green Party is going to be there. It's an activist summit. It's gonna be so heavy hitting. Zoya's going to be there with me. We're going to do a 10-demand police abolition activist panel as well. That's next weekend. And if you want to get involved, I implore you, look at a local organization, a left organization in your area. Start there. Learn how to be an activist, and then you can start doing stuff on your own. The message that comes from RBN, the reason why we roast Bernie and AOC, the Democrats, the Republicans, we roast these motherfuckers to shreds. We roast Toasty. A lot of you motherfuckers are upset at that. Some of you was. Because I'm like, God, this obsession that you guys have over politicians and having, oh my God, Toasty's going to save us. Bernie's going to, Ron DeSantis going to say, RBN, we are not tolerating that shit. Toasty, AOC, all these politicians, as we know it here, are frauds. And we ourselves, by engaging in mutual aid, direct action, and coming together as a community that reject the individual nature of capitalism, we are all we have. And if someone in the inside game want to join us, that's great. But we are not here to work for motherfuckers. We are not here to phone bank. We're not here to donate. We are not here to pay to vote for these motherfuckers either. That's the message that RBN wanted to bring to you guys. Please get involved if you can. We have fun on the channel. We laugh, we cry. It's a good time here. But channel that to something. That's the message that we want. We got an activist that we want to give out. We had an activist summit next weekend, and I really hope that we can get a big turnout the same way we will get a turnout if we're doing a video about TYT. You know what I mean? Let's show some support for activists, guys. So that's my last word. Thank you for 199. Steve, I need to speak to a manager right now. I'm sure that's a funny joke. Thank you for $2. Why think Russia, China don't point out trafficking? I think I don't know 100% of the content of your comment, but I think they do. I don't know. I don't know the content of your comment, so I'll be careful there. But anyway, thank you for super chat. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. With that said, I'm gonna sign out. Make sure you guys subscribe and support us on Patreon if you want to join the war. Zoya, last word. Anything you want to say?
I'm super excited for the Activist Summit. And, whenever I watch your show, there's a lot of people always asking, what can we do? What can we do? We already know these problems. So for people who are already aware and want to get involved, this is it. Mark next weekend. There's going to be tons of activists from every hemisphere. And they're going to be telling you actions you can get involved in, things that you can start doing right now. And if you're lost and you're just wondering where to get started, just Google mutual aid in your area. Mutual aid networks have existed for decades, and there are some that are already empowered in your area. You can join one or you can start one. And please tune in for the Activist Summit. It's going to be fire. I'm super excited for that. And last thing on the Russia-Ukraine thing, you don't have to be pro-Ukraine. You don't have to be pro-Russia. You have to be pro-peace. My leftist position is no U.S. NATO expansion, no military involvement in foreign countries, and we must push for peace and diplomacy always and be consistent. Love and solidarity to everyone.
Much love and solidarity to you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.